and then welcome to my book corner. 2025 is finally falling, collapsing, exhausted over the finish line. And what a bonkers, unpredictable, nutty year it has been. And not, in many ways, not a great one for a lot of people. However, been a pretty good reading year, at least for me personally. So this video is to celebrate my favourite reads of the year. And when I say I've had a great reading year, I have one audiobook left to finish. I'm recording this on the 30th. It's not going to make the top 10, but out of, assuming that's finished, out of the 119 books I've read this year, which is far more than I expected to read, 66 of them got 4 stars or above, which is a phenomenal reading year in terms of quality, I feel at least. Well, this is to celebrate the creme de la creme of my reads for this year. And this is a very, very indie author heavy list. So there's every chance you're going to see some books in here from authors that you don't know. So this is going to be split into 3 different sections: 4.5s, 4.75s, and 5-star reads. I'm going to give you the blurb of each of the books. I'm going to tell you a little bit why I liked them so much. And there's going to be a little bit of a reading from each of the books as well. So strap in and let's talk about my 4.5-star reads for 2025. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to start with the title, the blurb, what I liked about it, and then the reading. So starting off, we're doing the 4.5 stars. There's 6 in this category altogether. We start with Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. Now, I do have a physical for this, but actually this is the only audiobook on this list. This was narrated by the phenomenal Moira Quirk, who I've spoken about before for their work on Gideon the Ninth in particular. Possibly my favourite audiobook narrator at this moment in time. This falls, I think, under Fantasy Dark Academia. The blurb for this one: for 20 years, Siona has devoted every waking moment to the study of magic. When she finally achieves her ambition to become the first woman admitted to the High Magistracy at the University of Magics and Industry, she finds herself undermined at every turn. Instead of a lab assistant, she's paired with a janitor, putting her crucial research at risk. But Thomil wasn't always a janitor. Once a nomadic hunter from the wild plains outside the city, he now sees a chance to understand the forces that decimated his tribe and drove him from his homeland. Together they will uncover an ancient secret that could change the course of magic if it doesn't get them killed first. I love it when a magic system has a cost, especially when it's a hidden cost. Really like the reveal for that in there, first of all. I like the Dark Academia vibes. I like the fact this takes a look at sexism in academia, which is rife throughout this. The idea of colonialism in terms of the way conquered people are dealt with and how resources are stripped from conquered lands as well. And kind of the level of apathy due to lack of education in the populace that did the conquering, because they don't really know what's going on. They just enjoy the fruits of the labour and they don't see the cost. All those things work really, really well for me. I like the magic system. It's really interestingly done. Very, very scientifically focused, it's worth saying. The reason it doesn't quite hit 5 stars for me, I do think the narration sort of boosts it a little bit because of Moira Quirk's amazing voice work. Everybody gets a voice. I don't particularly like the main character. She is very ambitious and quite ruthless at times with that, which makes her mildly dislikable, and her romance doesn't quite sit right with me personally. And she also has this level of naivety which makes complete sense and helps drive the story forward as they begin to uncover some of the magic secrets. But it doesn't pair very well with their kind of ruthless ambition. But overall, This was a pretty dark, actually, once its twist started kicking in, fantasy academia read that is well worth checking out. It is a standalone as well, worth bearing that in mind, so you're not committing to a series with this one. So this goes in as the first of my top reads for 2025, and here is a reading from the book.
Everyone ready? Elder Surtha said as the last of the Caldanae took up positions along the rocks. Numbers were supposed to help. No solitary runner ever made the crossing in one piece, but in big groups, sometimes there was a chance. Prey mentality. Move! As one, the Caldanae surged onto the lake. The moment Thomil's boots hit the ice, something changed. Normally, Blight did not announce its arrival to the mortal senses. But this time, Thomil picked up a slight shift in pressure, a promise of evil in the air. White ignited the dark before Thomil, catching one of the teenage hunters who had struck out ahead of the rest of the group. As the light hit the boy's sleeve, he jerked to a stop, and when it flared to illuminate his face, Thomil recognised the Blight's first victim, Dreven, an orphan of the last winter, a gifted small game trapper, a quiet boy. He was not quiet now. No one was when the Blight pierced their flesh.
Up next, we have an urban fantasy. Not my normal preferred fantasy genre, it is worth mentioning. But this was just so much fun. It is a follow-up to Board Game Werewolf. We're talking about Shy Trans Banshee by Tony Santarella. This is just so much fun. Like, genuinely, this had me chuckling throughout. It's a real scream. Brian, Nick, and Darby, three friends practiced in fighting supernatural crime when Brian's not committing it as a werewolf once a month, have been sent to London to try to track down a missing colleague. Prowling around the city, they stumble across a clairvoyancy smuggling ring, try saying that 3 times when you're drunk, who's kidnapping all the fortune tellers in Soho and why. And is it a coincidence that Maeve, a timid trans woman, turns up on the gang's doorstep and has the uncanny ability to know just what's going to happen next. Just like the first book, this is laced with a sense of humour that I really, really do like. It's a lot more light-hearted in many ways than the first book was, whereas that dealt with the idea of toxic masculinity and influences. This is more about Brian kind of feeling out of place like a sore thumb and learning to accept himself for who he is, flaws and all, and the growing dynamic of the group. And it's the chemistry here that really does sell this. There are some absolutely absurd moments in here. The description of an escape attempt. No, sorry, not an escape attempt. The description of why Brian is found naked in a park at night by Maeve on their first meeting, and the alibi he comes up with after a few bottles of wine is the perfect sort of descriptor for this, involving grinder hookups and glory holes. And that might give you an idea of what some of the humour is like in here. This hit a very specific itch for me. I need more people to read this and talk about it. I think, just like Board Game Werewolf before it, not enough people talk about this. But here is my reading for Shy Trans Banshee.
He watches the bears snap their jaws at passing fish and begins to mimic their movements, wondering if he could do it himself. What other lessons could these grizzlies teach a board game werewolf? The biting, slashing, and survival instincts always came as second nature to him, but the patience these grizzlies exhibit, their calm, their tranquility, well, that still needs some practice. But Brian doesn't beat himself up as much as he used to. When he was first cursed with werewolfism by the witch that, he contends, he barely hit with his car 6 years ago, he didn't have a modicum of the self-control that he has now. It was tough in those early days, feeling the anger build up slowly as the full moon crept closer and closer. He would blunt his super senses with booze and aim to black out for his monthly transition. He'd bike to the park as quickly as he could tear off his clothes and sway piss-drunk and naked. On one occasion, he stared up at the sky and saw 2 full moons. He stood in shock, wondering what this mysterious event would mean for his night's transition. But then he closed one eye, and the sky snapped back into focus with only one moon hanging up there. Crisis averted.
The next 3 books that I'm going to mention are all ebooks, so I will drop their covers up on screen for you. The first of those came out earlier this year. It is an indie published book. It is from a friend of the channel, Rex Burke, Special Delivery, a book that he released earlier this year. Possibly his darkest sci-fi book so far. A dangerous mission, a second chance. Actually, scratch that. No chance. Dix's career as a trooper in the Federation Army is unblemished, until the day he disobeys a direct order and strikes an officer. Now, Dix has a choice: face a life of hard labour that promises to be brutal and short, or accept a mysterious invitation to join a Black Ops mission in hostile terrain. The plan sounds simple, if horribly dangerous. Fetch a fearsome weapon from a secret location and deliver it to a distant planet whose population is under the chilling yoke of the Federation's rival empire, the Axis. Do it without getting caught or implicating the Federation, and Dix's transgressions will be forgiven. But the weapon turns out to be unlike anything he could have expected, and Dix's troubles have only just begun. So, this is a sci-fi, and what I like about this is how balanced it is, because this is Rex's darkest book so far in many, many ways. This is military sci-fi, but it has that level of humour laced throughout, which at times is very bawdy, quite on the edge at times. It has some really, really visceral action scenes in here and these gory moments. Not overkill, but they are in there more so than in Rex's other works as well. But they balance each other out so well. This reminds me in many ways of the Starship Troopers movie. I haven't read the books that that's based on, so I can't comment on that. But that sort of level of tongue-in-cheek humour and lack of competence in the military does kind of run through this, along with it as well, and this is something that runs in a lot of Rex's books, the kind of found family aspect where you have these misfits thrown together into an insanely impossible situation. Add on to that the reveal of what the weapon is, which is a masterclass, and this is just such a fun book to read, which does balance its darker moments exceptionally well. This might be my favourite of Rex's books so far, which is high praise because I love all of Rex's books so far. But here is my reading from Special Delivery.
Dix looked at the man squarely in the face. Those miners have been shooting at me today with your weapons. Killed 3 of my squad. Upset. Barely covers it. Sport. Dix spat out the last word. Ear Guy raised his hands in submission. I said it was a bit delicate, didn't I? And look, I'm just a simple trader meeting a demand. How was I to know what they were going to do with the guns? I thought they wanted them for hunting. I believe there's little else to do on this planet. Hunting. With ground cannons, scope snipes, and high-velocity blasters, to name just 3 of the items that have nearly killed me today. Dix drew himself up and glowered.
So, for full disclosure, I did receive an arc of this next book, but it really did take me by surprise because this is a short story anthology, and they can be very uneven, especially by multiple authors, in terms of tone and quality, but this just blew me away. Don't know if it's just because this scratches just a very specific itch in terms of this is a fantasy anthology. It might be that. But this is a really, really good quality fantasy anthology. This is Locks and Keys, a fantasy anthology by the Secret Scribes, who are a loose collection of indie authors. The indie authors involved in this one are Alex Schuerman, R.E. Sandpiper, G.J. Terrell, Sean O'Boyle, Dave Lawson, Bella Dunn, L.M. Douglas, R.E. Sanders, Lamia and Bayern, Tom Buckbeard, and Bill Adams. I have read some of these authors before. I have other of these authors already on my e-reader ready to read. I just haven't gotten to them yet. So this very much, for me, ended up being a bit of a taster session for authors that I haven't got to yet. The blurb for this one: will a persecuted witch give the kingdom's heir what he deserves? Does the squad of plucky rebels find a way out of an infiltration gone wrong? That one's a blast. How can a street urchin survive in the shadow of an infamous gang? Can a thief brave the belly of the beast in search of a treasure that will never be hers? How sinister can a bond be between an orphan and her mother? Pirates raid a fishing island in the sky. A sickly girl pushes past the threshold for Demon's Night. An apprentice gloom singer, which is an amazing term, just on a side point, comes face to face with what he fears most. With her life on the line, a cook prepares one last dish. A demon girl flies to the city of humans, begging them to change. 10 unique fantasy stories by 10 different authors. Dragons, sky pirates, and even samurai inhabit these pages. Locks, keys, and secrets loom over all. So the key thing with all of these stories is they have the theming of either something that's locked away, something that's hidden, something that's secret, or something that needs to be unlocked in some way. So all these stories are really, really good. Obviously, some stories work better for me than others. That is always the way with short story collections. But the quality overall of this is absolutely stellar. If you like fantasy short stories, I highly recommend you pick this one up. In terms of the reading for this one, I actually rolled a 10-sided dice to decide which one I was going to read. So the excerpt I'm going to read to you is from A Simple Snatch by G.J. Terrell, and I hope you enjoy.
Lars lumbered over to the grate with a nod, removing it as casually as one might pluck a hair from their grandmother's chin. Lars peered in. Looks cramped, he concluded. And dark, Pook squeaked. I don't like dark spaces. Pook, what? Clara said, spinning around. That wasn't on your application form. There was a very specific question about your willingness to crawl in dark places. Was there? Yes, it was right below the question about whether you were in the secret guard or not. That particular question had received a resounding no from everyone. Clara felt quite proud of that. Operation Poison Cat was watertight.
Next up on the list, we have The Devil in the Woods by S. Jean? I'm not sure, but this is a YA horror. It's only 156 pages long. This was 100% me buying stuff because I liked the cover. So the blurb for this one: 50 years ago, a girl walked into the woods with only matches to guide her and then disappeared. Days later, her dead body came out without her heart, and upon her skin was written a dare: come into the woods and find my still beating heart. It's a silly urban legend, or at least it's supposed to be. Over the years, many have followed the dare, and many of the same have disappeared or come out just as dead, prompting the city to declare the woods off limits. Not that off limits ever stops would-be urban legend debunkers. When high schooler Felix Graves agrees to help his classmates debunk the urban legend of the devil in the woods once and for all, he doesn't believe there's anything to it, until something finds him in the dark. So, in many ways, this is quite a run-of-the-mill folk horror story. The idea being a group of teenagers are doing a project, and one of them is doing about debunking urban myths, and there's an urban myth in the town, and they go off to show that it's nonsense, except, as you would expect, it's not nonsense. This has a level of creep factor that just works so well with the characters that are involved in this, because you have the skeptic, you have the guy who nobody really cares about, the kind of the outsider. You have a bit of a conspiracy going on. There's a lot more going on under the hood of this than is what initially appears. And it just works so well. It's a quick read. The characters are actually pretty likable overall. There's a real sense of danger and tension throughout, which you don't always get in YA horror novels like this one. Overall, I think this was just a good little read, but here's a quick excerpt from this one.
He struck it across the box with purpose and flinched as the light blazed brighter than the other 5. With it came the strong smell of a bonfire. That couldn't be. He hadn't dropped any of the blown-out matches. There was nothing to make a bonfire, yet it smelled so close, like it was right in front of him. Lights danced off the trees, in time to a song he couldn't hear. The longer he held still, searching for the devil, the stronger the bonfire smell became. There was no way there was a bonfire further in. His match flickered gold and white, too bright to look at, but it didn't help Felix see any better. The trees were packed too closely together. He couldn't go any further. The darkness beyond was like it repelled light itself. And then, spindly fingers latched around his neck. Felix lurched backward, sucking in a sharp breath. The fingers broke like they were twigs, must have been branches. And just as he went to laugh it off, the dark surged forward. Fingers found purchase around his throat. They were real, not twigs. They squeezed his shout away and forced Felix to look up. An elk skull came out of the dark and stared back at him with a single eye glowing like fire inside its empty eye socket. The match went out with a single breath, and the entire woods sheathed themselves back into darkness.
Up next, we have Toothsucker by Caden Love, and this cover is just mwah. I like this cover so much. It has a dolphin on it, which means more than you would think it does. This is a cyberpunk horror, which, to be fair, pretty much all cyberpunk is horror in one way or another. So it's a sci-fi horror. It's set in a cyberpunk setting in the future with all that corporate hellscape and stuff. The blurb for this one: in a cyberpunk future, an alarming disease strikes, dissolving the bones of those with cybernetic enhancements. Petier, a refugee, sells himself to a company experimenting with a potential cure and finds himself with a strange new implant and a vampiric hunger for teeth. Petier only wanted a short trial with easy money, and now he's at the mercy of a company hell-bent on market control, even if it means turning him into their personal pharmaceutical assassin. They're out for political power, and Petier is out for an escape and teeth. So, what I really like about this is the way that light is used within this setting. The various different, I've forgotten what the word is, light colours, spectrums of light kind of represent your level of affluence. So that sounds like a weird thing to say until you read the book and you see how light is used, both as weapons, as clothing, as armour, and running from bottom to top, it slowly gets more premium and more powerful. I also like the interesting take on the idea of vampirism here, with this idea of our main character having to eat and consume teeth to basically act almost like a drug boost to give more power, more speed, and whatever else that he needs. It's a really interesting way of taking that sort of vampire power set and applying it in a different way with a different stimuli. But the world is just so interesting to be a part of. This is just, it's gruesome at times, as you would expect. It is crunchy at moments, which I really like. The world is bonkers, like genuinely. And despite the rough edges on the characters, they are genuinely likable in some weird way in some cases. And Petier in particular goes for a really interesting arc throughout the course of this book, and it really sets itself up for the follow-up, which is out in January. I really enjoyed this. Again, much like a number of the books on this list, I need more people to read this. If you like cyberpunk or you like vampires, both of those things potentially apply here. This may well be worth a check out. But here's my reading from Toothsucker.
Oh, hon, Honesty went extinct during the technological revolution. Technological sentience only made things more complex. Today, the truth is defined by whoever can sell the best story.
So now we move on to the 4.75, and we're going to start with a reread. I read this as part of Agitation August that was hosted by the amazing Margaret Pennard. Tag down below to her channel if you haven't checked it out already. And the book in question is Hell Followed with Us by Andrew Joseph White. And I'm showing the special edition off because any excuse to show the internal artwork for this absolute beauty of a book. Like, just absolutely stunning. So this is a YA horror dystopia. There is being, I believe, adapted potentially into an animated feature as well. So worth mentioning that. The blurb for this one: 16-year-old trans boy Benji is on the run from the cult that raised him, the fundamentalist sect that unleashed Armageddon and decimated the world's population. Desperately, he searches for a place where the cult can't get their hands on him, or, more importantly, on the bioweapon they infected him with. But, when cornered by monsters born from the destruction, Benji is rescued by a group of teens from the local Ackerson LGBTQ plus centre, affectionately known as the ALC. The ALC's leader, Nick, is gorgeous, autistic, and a deadly shot, and he knows Benji's darkest secret. The cult's bioweapon is mutating him into a monster deadly enough to wipe humanity from the earth once and for all. Still, Nick offers Benji shelter among his ragtag group of queer teens as long as Benji can control the monster and use its power to defend the ALC. Eager to belong, Benji accepts Nick's terms until he discovers the ALC's mysterious leader has a hidden agenda and more than a few secrets of his own. So, this is the normal cover of the book, which is also an absolute stunner, just on a side point. This was a reread. This was, I think, second place in my first top 10 video I did a few years ago. It gets into my top 10 again because this pulls at my heartstrings in a way that very few books do. The way this starts with blood and fury really does pull me in, and the interesting take on, again, you have found family, you have religious fundamentalism going on here, you have the seeing people as things, which is how most problems in the world tend to start in many ways once we start seeing people as people. And it just works so well. Now, it has dropped a little bit in my esteem on a reread, and that's simply because I've read Andrew Joseph White's other stuff, and I think from a technical standpoint, this is his debut novel. This is not as strong as his other works, but this just resonates with me in a way that those books don't. I absolutely love this book. This is going to become a regular reread, I suspect, for me. Hell Followed with Us by Andrew Joseph White. Go read it. Although I will say, check out the content warnings before you do, just in case, because for a YA, this is surprisingly edgy and gruesome at times. But here's my reading for Hell Followed with Us.
Here's the thing about being raised an angel. You don't process grief. Grief is a sin. Loss is God's design, and to mourn the dead is to insult his vision. To despair at his will is sacrilege. How dare you betray his plan by grieving what was always his to take? Unfaithful, disgusting heretic. You should be hung from the wall so the non-believers will know what's coming for them. Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death. So the image of Dad's body burns into the folds of my brain, writes itself between the grooves of my fingerprints, and I swallow it down until I choke. Angels cut out the part of us that remembers how to cry until we can't. We learn to mask the grief, to pack it away for later, until eventually we just die. The way I see it, I don't have to worry. If the angels get their way, all this grief will be his problem soon enough. And if they don't, God, please don't.
So the next one was another arc read for transparency, and this is from Adam Holcomb, and this was Bounty Inc. Now this is intended to be book 1 in a series. I don't know how many books the series is going to be yet. This came out earlier this year, and Adam's other works had been relatively small, 100, 150 pages maybe. So when I requested the arc for this one, I was a bit shocked when I'd been reading it for a while and barely got any distance into it until I realised it was 650 pages long. And yet I read over 400 pages of this in one day, which I very, very rarely do. So this is a sci-fi novel. And the blurb for this one: a dream lives on while a will is strong, but significant inheritance from a recently deceased father sure helps too. When Wynn throws away his easy life to open the galaxy's first bounty hunter organization and become a bounty hunter himself, he soon learns that a strong support system will be needed. A support system like an unwise mentor, her giant lizard ex-girlfriend, a woman trapped within her armor, a suspicious cyborg, a possible war criminal, several thousand beetles, and a 10-year-old insectoid with a pet. Money is never endless, however, and Wynn will need to lead his new friends down a dangerous path to prove Bounty Inc.'s worth and keep his dreams alive. So much fun. This is kind of if you take Star Wars, specifically the bounty hunters in Star Wars, and smash them into Mass Effect, the video game. That's what this reminds me of. This is wonderfully absurd in places. It has a true level of kineticism in its action scenes. The cast have absolutely phenomenal chemistry. Sage in particular is a real highlight for me personally. They're like the mentor figure. In fact, weirdly enough, the least interesting character for this is kind of the main character of Wynn Kelder, who are kind of just the rich kid with the inheritance. But even then, I'm saying that a bit disparagingly. They do go on an interesting arc as well. They're just kind of less interesting than the people around them. And again, you have this found family thing going on with this group sort of coming together, this ragtag group. And I love the idea of this group of people who you have some that are hyper competent, but the person in charge keeps sending them on missions and accidentally stepping on the same person's toes over and over and over again. There's some great foreshadowing in here. The humour, again, quite similar in many regards to Special Delivery. It has that sort of Starship Trooper-esque feel to it in the banter at times. And this is just so much fun. There were a few moments in there where I did literally laugh out loud, which I rarely do with sci-fi. The fact it was 650 pages and didn't feel like it as well. This felt 200 pages shorter than it was, with the way that it's paced and structured. So good. I cannot wait to see where this series goes next. But here is an excerpt from Bounty Inc.
Seth had even got Nelbot his new humanoid body, and Wynn had learned an important lesson. Don't let Seth order humanoid bodies without oversight. What the fuck? Sage proclaimed everyone's thoughts as she, Bazari, and Wynn walked into the lounge after training one day. Seth, Wynn called, looking around for the assistant. The humanoid bot turned in the lounge to face them, displaying high cheekbones, a chiseled jaw, and dazzling eyes. Its body had a muscular form and wore pants. Actual pants. Greetings, Mr. Kelder, it said in a husky voice that sent all three reeling. What? Wynn wanted more sustenance to his question, but he couldn't find the words that should come after. Seth poked his head into the lounge from the entrance hall and grinned. Mr. Kelder! Elbot's body came in. Isn't it great? Everyone looked back to the hunky robot, then back to Seth. Why is he wearing pants? Bazari asked. Well, that's my fault. Apparently, it came with anatomically correct parts. I figured pants would solve that cheaper than a replacement. It's got a dick, Sage asked. Why does a robot need a penis? Win asked. Don't ask that, Win, Sage interrupted. You don't want to know the answer. It's not like that, Seth waved his hands in front of himself. I mean it. Honest accident. I just thought the body would be soothing to others. I want to burn it with fire, Sage said. Can I shoot it with the slag cannon, Win?
The third and final of the 4.75 ratings is a Dirge for Cascius Part 1 by Callum Lott, first released in 2024, 475 pages. And first off, the cover is absolutely gorgeous on this one. So, the blurb for this: chaos seeps into the Valsolus galaxy. Cassius Carside is on the brink of letting his addiction to reliving his sorrows claim his mind when the sages demand he take a new partner. Cassius must forfeit his old ways in order to solve the twisted Red Hand murders. To unravel an interstellar mystery and stop the Red Hand, Cassius must pull himself from the very depths of despair and learn to change before the entire Velutra fall into oblivion. Stare too long into the abyss, and the abyss peers back. So, I already had something by Callum Lott. I think it's Arcoma, which is set in the same universe. And I was watching a TikTok, and I actually think it was Caden Love, the author of Toothsucker, who was doing a video saying, if you like this video game, you will like this book. And he likened this to Disco Elysium, where you have this very, very broken main character who doesn't really have a full memory of anything, makes a load of bad choices, but kind of ends up, potentially depending on your choices, on a bit of a redemption arc. Very much a maverick, very much someone who is good at their job in spite of their own demons. And this is what this book is all about. It's about the main characters' demons that they carry with them, their own trauma, their own loss, their own reservations, and their own fears. This is a sci-fi. It is a detective story as well. And the character work in this is just so good. Amongst the best character work I have read since I started on booktube. Cascius themselves are such a wonderful is the wrong word, wonderfully broken character in many regards. And I do see the Disco Elysium. Yeah, Disco Elysium. I should know, I have this game. Disco Elysium reference does actually sit really well here. I have done a full review on this. I've also done a chapter 1 reading, which I will link above. But I will do a short excerpt from the book here as well. So this is a short read from Dirge from Cascius, Part 1.
The serpent jerked. Everyone whipped around to see it still lying dead. Then it shuddered again, and the red scales contorted and bulged outward in a single spot at the top of its mounded body. In the next spasm, the scales burst open and its body tore asunder, gushing blood and chunks of flesh. From the gutted womb, a smaller serpent slithered down into the chamber, ushering an ear-piercing, howling hiss. As it wriggled towards them, human arms burst out all along its body, splattering chunks of flesh and pockets of bloody rain everywhere. The serpent's large head, however, was undoubtedly ill-haven, and its tongue unfurled from its mouth between 4 colossal fangs.
That leaves us with the 5-star reads. We have 3 for this category. Full disclosure, once again, all 3 of these books I did receive arcs of. I have actually since bought the physical edition for 2 of these. The other one, the physical edition, wasn't out initially at launch, and I just haven't had a chance to go back and pick it up, but I will be doing. And we're going to cover that one first because it's the first one I read this year, and I am going to do this in order of when I read them. We have Diplomacy of the Knife by C.M. Kaplan. Now, Connor was the first person to come on the channel and do an interview. I will link that above if you want to check that one out. This is book 2 in the Fall of Mercy series. This is a follow-up to The Fall Is All There Is, which is a book I really enjoyed. The blurb for this. Peter Mercy's had a rough time since he rode home on a cyborg horse. He's lost a hand that's been replaced with a mess of steel and piano string, broken his thyroid-powered sword, and helped ignite a civil war that's engulfed the countryside. His sister, the Queen, has ordered him to root out any traitors in Mercy House. But Peter can hardly ferret out the truth from his siblings, let alone a vast network of spies with counterplots, and every day more turncoats move against him. If he has any hope of putting down this uprising, he'll have to work with his sister, he's still learning to trust, but his enemies are one step ahead of him at all times, and they're hiding in the last place he'd think to look. I have decided that Connor is insane, first of all, because this world is just mind-blowing. The best way I can describe this as a setting is coal punk biotech with magical elements. This is if you took cyberpunk, but instead of having that super advanced futuristic tech, you make it out of cogs and coal. You have buildings made out of animals. You have a ship that is powered by a beating heart that at one point, because of the damage it takes, has a heart arrhythmia, and they have to give it beta blockers to get it to work as an engine. Eventually, the boat explodes because someone falls into the heart, causing cardiovascular failure and a full-on heart attack. It is mental on every level. Our main character of Peter is what we will best describe as incredibly intense. They are very much in the moment, very sort of tunnel vision at times, very much overwhelmed as well. They are an autistic main character, which is worth bearing in mind, mentioning just here. And that comes through so well with their narrative, because it means you have this main character who their perspective is incredibly unreliable. And that causes so many misunderstandings and so many problems. And also you've got a level of impulsiveness there that is fascinating to read. This takes all the stuff that book 1 does really, really well and shaves off the edges a little bit. Peter is not especially a likeable character, but there's something endearing about just sheer chaotic gremlin energy that they bring at all times. And it's just phenomenal. This book has the most highlights on my e-reader of any book I have read this year, bar none. It is ridiculous. I am very, very excited for the next book in this series. Also, the cover art, stunning. The book 1 cover art has recently changed. This is in line with the redesign of that one. I just like purple on a cover. But anyway, here was a reading from the first of my 5-star reads for this year, The Diplomacy of the Knife by C.M. Kaplan.
You think that's what this is about? Fuck this. Fuck her. Mom, do you remember those times you'd drug me and tie me down? When you demonstrate all the incisions you could make in me, all the surgeries you could perform. Why did you do that? Tell me, how did that factor into your grand plan? She rolled her eyes. Peter? Hey, remember the time when I was 3 and you pressed my hand against a stove because I kept trying to touch it? You wouldn't give up. You had to realise it was hot. One time, I slashed my leg in a knife fight with Edgar, and when you found blood on your office carpet, you threatened to open me up, stuff a live rat in my chest, and sew me back up so I could see how it feels to have something scuttling around in my space. I wound up puking from the stress. You made me sit in my own vomit for 2 hours while you left me alone to debate whether or not you'd go through with it. Was that about seeing the sky again? What strategic advantage would you say that gave you?
The next 5-star read for the year came a lot sooner than I expected it to. Whispers of the Storm by Z.B. Steele. So, again, we've had ZB on the channel. If I can still put a thing at the top, I will do. I can't remember where I'm up to in terms of how many I'm allowed to put up. This is a grim, dark fantasy. So, Redlin of the Wolves, Vanguard, Legend, Assassin, Reaper. Listen to my story. I wasn't always the monster they see me as. Half of the songs they sing are stories of my grandeur. The other half are tales of my misdeeds. The sad truth is that they're all true. So listen to my tale and learn why it all happened. Learn the reason for the war, the reason for all the death. Listen to my tale and listen well. I won't be alive long enough to tell it again. So this is book 1 in a series. This has the focus on our main character of Redlin. This is a backward focused narrative where we have our main character, after being captured, telling his life story to someone who's recording it, basically. Well, this is obviously from our main character's point of view, and we go through their trauma when they first came into sort of their training citadel sort of thing, the friends they made along the way, the losses, the further trauma they went through, then moving out of that into further society and their level of ambition and their driving force, the need to prove themselves after being abandoned and rejected multiple times. Redlin is a really interesting character, and I don't trust a word of this retelling because this is told from a biased point of view and it feels like there's something else going on. This reminded me why I love reading fantasy. It's been a while since I've read a book that made me feel like this. This put me back in mind of when I first started reading the genre properly back in the late 90s and early 2000s, which I don't think I can give much of a higher recommendation to. That's Whispers of the Storm by Z.B. Steele. Here's the reading for this one.
There's a lot of interesting things you can hear about a person, Redlin said as he took a deep pull from the pipe. A slighted teenage boy might describe a girl as a hag, a bitch, a liar, and a tease. That girl's chosen boy might describe her as an angel and the most beautiful girl in all the land, the kindest person he's ever met. Both are probably wrong. Our perceptions are our reality until changed or challenged, and those are the stories we tell. Now apply that line of thinking to history, to legends, to me. Everyone has views on these things, and the most common views get written down and recorded in the annals of history. However, the victorious general is viewed in the lens of a boy in love, the most beautiful, kindest, smartest, and so on, while the losers of the conflict are recorded as prideful, evil, etc. History is full of preconceptions and biases, meaning that history is full of lies.
That brings us to the last of my 5-star reads for this year. This came out back in August. It's a novella coming in at 110 pages. Liminal Monsters by Luke Tarzian. Now, last year, A Cup of Tea at the Mouth of Hell by Luke Tarzian was in my top 3 reads. This is kind of a companion piece to that one. It's another exploration of grief, but looking at it through a different angle. So, in the centre of the forest sits a house of leaves and ash. Inside the house, his heart and lies. Inside the house, called Sempiternity, there is a lake, at the centre of which an island sits. Upon the island, a spire of stone, surrounding the spire an orchard of dreams. Beneath an apple tree sits faceless self, who writes of sorry things. What an awful place! What a cruelty it is, being birthed in pain. But when a dog that should not be wanders into sempiternity through a door that should not be, self learns a terrible truth. Sempiternity is no longer safe, no longer theirs. Fictional failures come in search of proper ends, in search of slaughter quelled by self's prosaic hand, in search of lies. Thus, self departs sempiternity for the forest dark, for at its centre is the ruined town of Own, the place where the nightmare begins. The prose in this is phenomenal, just like it was in the other books that I've read so far by Tarzian. This takes an unflinching look at trauma and grief once again, and whilst its companion piece from last year is all about the structures we use to get through grief and sometimes avoid it, this looks at how the avoidance of grief can sometimes poison various aspects of your life and your mind, specifically in this case looking at it through more creative processes. And the recollection that sometimes grief and trauma, they never really go away properly, they never really heal, they become a part of you. And that's a really, really strong lesson, because it's something that we don't really teach people that well. We tell people they need to get better. And some things kind of have to become a part of you, they have to be accepted. This is possibly the most powerful book I've read this year. There's just something about this book and Cup of Tea at the Mouth of Hell that talks to me personally because of some stuff that I have personally been through, and I really do connect with these books. We do have a reading for this one. I hope you enjoy, but that is my last 5-star read of this year, Liminal Monsters by Luke Tarzian, and here's my reading.
Grief is wondrously monstrous. It is the implement by which we come to live in lies. That thing which births discordance in the melody of our hearts. The hang-dead wood is shallow, an orchard of souls at the centre of which a spire city stabs the sky like a splintered sword. Once it was him. Now it is rot, and I am the farmer of grins, returning to reap confectionery flesh for the demon in its midst. Armed with a blade of glass, I start the long walk to the church of rumour. It's harvest day.
So there we go. That is my top 12 reads of this year, all of which scored 4.5 stars or above. This has been a longer video than I anticipated, so if you've watched all the way through, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. What I would love to know from you is, what is your favourite read of 2025? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're watching this before 2025 ends, I wish you a happy new year and a great 2026 to come. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all next time.